The mining industry talks a big game when it comes to the inclusion of women in the industry, but when you look at the statistics, it tells a different story, and something we need to be talking about a lot more. How many women are in the mining industry, and what are they doing to contribute towards positive change? And who better to be talking about this subject than the chairperson of Women in Mining South Africa, Raksha. It's very good to have you here with me.
Thanks.
So let's delve right into this. The World Bank, in one of its latest reports, says that the number of women in the global mining industry is a mere 15%. I think South Africa has a very similar statistic. Raksha, this tells me that as an industry we are stagnating when it comes to bringing women into the mining industry. Would you say that's a true statement, and what are we going to do about it?
If we're going to be honest about this, because we need to be, yeah, I think we are stagnating a little bit. I think it is becoming a little bit challenging in terms of how do we move beyond that 15% mark. And I think that people need to stop talking about this and actually doing. There's a lot of conversations that happen every year at every conference. Everybody's talking about women in mining. How are we going to be more inclusive? What are we going to do differently? But we're not really seeing the true change that happens with it. And I think one of the biggest problems that we have is that women are starting to get very frustrated and they're starting to leave the industry, which results in bigger problems because we aren't able to retain it. The skills that women bring, the different type of leadership that they bring, the empathetic outlook in terms of changing cultures and creating better work environments are huge positives that can actually ultimately end up to bigger profitability with all of the different organizations. Yet it still feels as if women are being placed into senior roles as a tick box exercise, or they're being put into certain roles, but the real decision making and conversations that need to happen take place outside of those women. And that's what needs to change. I think a lot of frustration that I see is that there are a lot of CEOs who ultimately run this industry completely are still not accepting the fact that women have a voice and a seat that they need to occupy. I think that there needs to be a lot more accountability by the leaders in the organization, the leaders in this industry, and all stakeholders need to be doing this for the right reason, as opposed to just ticking the box and moving forward. How do we do that? I think that's the biggest challenge that exists on the table right now. But something has to change, or more and more of us are going to get frustrated and start walking out of the industry altogether.
Absolutely. I mean, we keep having these conversations year after year, but we're not seeing the change, and that's what we need to do. And I think it starts with accountability, as you say, Raksha, and I'm inspired to have you say that to our audience, that it needs to be an accountability issue that we're talking about.
And they probably, I don't know what the right answer is in terms of how they do that. I mean, maybe boards need to be debating this as part of their strategic conversations. Like there needs to be, attach it to an incentive scheme, attach it to the proper growth of the business. There needs to be tangible statistics that needs to be discussed at that level. It can't be the stuff that's going on at a mid-management level with a sub-women in mining committee that takes place within an organization. This should be an actual board topic, just like everything else is discussed. I mean, in the beginning when I think ESG started, it was also one of those things where, we'll talk about it just because we need to. Women in mining should become one of those very serious conversation pieces, because I'm tired of having a woman in mining conversation. We should be talking about the professionals in the mining industry and how we all equally contribute on a merit basis, as opposed to the fact that, I'm here because I'm one of the females representing the industry.
Absolutely. And I think we've painted the scene, we've spoken about the challenges that we're having as an industry, presented the reality for what it is. I suppose the other side of the coin is the retention piece.
Yep.
Once you have a woman in a position in the mining industry, how do you keep her? Because that exit is vast in the mining industry. We're not able to hold on to those great women skills. What are we doing about that?
And that is the single biggest problem as we see it as well, is that we cannot retain the right skill set. There's a couple reasons as I see it in terms of what the problem probably exists. One is that we need to create safer work environments for women to thrive in. Gender-based violence continues to be a huge issue that impacts the mining industry, and particularly from a South African context. And I think that organizations need to take better accountability of that. I think there are a lot of great policies that exist. There's a lot of different conversations that take place. But is that actually being translated all the way to the ground? To that employee who's a mining engineer working underground, does she know her rights? Does she know what is a safe space for her to thrive in as well? And up until we don't create safe, inclusive workspaces, women are also not going to be comfortable to pursue certain roles and certain careers. Then we have the situation where women are working extremely hard, starting to climb the ladders, getting to that mid-management space, and then what? Then they start getting stuck. There's no support, there's no sponsorship of women in those spaces. We need to be investing in the skill set that we find. When we identify real talent, we should identify it and develop it and let it thrive such that they can start climbing those ladders. Because if we don't create the opportunities, we don't create the promotions, we don't create the roles for these great talented women to start climbing that ladder, why would you want to continue sitting in a space where you're not going to grow and you're going to stay stagnant? So I think there's a couple different things that we need to do to actually almost foster the growth of the women in the industry as well. And again, I genuinely believe it begins right at the top, because if we don't start living the ethos of an inclusive, truly inclusive work culture, how is it ever going to translate all the way through the ladder?
So taking it from the top is one angle, right? But let's take it from the other side. Girls at school. How do we get girls at that level to actually start to consider a career in mining?
We have to be changing the narrative. We've got to be speaking about this with an entirely different vocabulary, for lack of a better word. We need to be changing the perceptions of what little boys can do and what little girls can do. We need to be encouraging in our home spaces already that as a little girl, you should be able to play with the construction toys as opposed to just your Barbie dolls. You should be able to actually be asking the questions of, but what does it mean if I want to be a geologist? Like, do little girls even know that those careers exist for them? You know, one of the initiatives that we created at Women in Mining South Africa was we started creating a career booklet. And this career booklet was created with the intention of showcasing the different faces of women in mining. To say that you can be a woman, so who looks like me, sounds like me, came from the same world that I did, and I can still be an engineer, a drill rig operator, a geologist, a chemist, an accountant, a nurse, and still have successful, thriving careers in this space. But up until we don't start changing those narratives and having those conversations differently, that stuff's never going to change. So we created this booklet to go out into schools to start having the conversations. And it's not even about having it at university, it's too late. It's not even about having it at high school. We've got to start at the beginning, at the primary school, foundational stages, where we start having different discussions, start giving kids different opportunities, let them play with different types of toys, become curious, support and build and foster the environment of curiosity, and teach and excite them about the different types of things that exist, so that kids get excited about science. Is cool. It's incredibly cool. But we need to be teaching that to the younger generations as well.
So there's one last thing I want to touch on, and it's really taking everything you share just into account. We see on occasion the odd CEO fulfilling a role of women in mining, representing, you know, what women in mining stand for. But I believe there's a whole layer of women below that are probably making greater differences in the mining sector. How do we give them a voice? How do we get them to platform what they're really doing to give meaning and making change in the mining industry?
You know, Laura, it's so exciting to see a lot of the young ladies who have passed through WIMSA's mentorship program over the last couple of years. When I see them on LinkedIn, you know, talking about the stuff that they're doing, or like how they're giving back into their women in mining committees at their companies, or how they're now starting to mentor the younger generations coming through, it is so inspiring and exciting. But you're right, there's a layer of them that exists where nobody knows who they are. We know because they've been part of our little world. But we need to be showcasing them more. We need to be supporting them more. And I think educating, you know, and sharing the heroes in our industry becomes so important, so that other generations and younger people see those people and they aspire to be like them. However, the role, again, I'm going to keep saying it, it starts at the top. We need to recognize the real talent that exists in our organizations. We need to start fostering environments and workplace cultures that allows them to stand up. Champion your women in your organization. Show them that the work that they're doing and what they're putting in at mid-management is recognized, it is acknowledged, and then give them the development and the tools that they need to start climbing that ladder and ultimately become those future leaders. The programs that you guys had of Indaba are incredible. Your young generations program, all of those younger leaders that are needed. We need to be harnessing them more, celebrating them more, putting them out there more. Because if we don't start giving them those opportunities, again, they're going to run away from the industry. But I do think all of this starts at the top. We've got to change mindsets. We cannot be doing this for tick box exercises. We cannot be putting women that are not ready to go into certain spaces just because we need a woman that fills a certain requirement. Train, develop, support, encourage, build, all of it. It's a holistic picture that we need to do. But it starts with us as leaders taking accountability for who we are and wanting to actually better the industry for the right reason. And then I think we'll start to see change. But we can't be having this conversation again next year, because otherwise, what are we doing?
Exactly. I laugh about it, but it's a very serious
It's
issue.
a really, really important issue.
Look, we're talking a bit of a negatives kind of story here, and there's a lot of positive for women in the mining industry. From your perspective, Raksha, what is the positive message that we need to be sharing with women that are potentially or are in the mining industry?
And you're right. I mean, there's so many wins that we have had. There's been so much of positive change and growth. And whilst the number is not moving at the rate that we'd like it to, I still think we're in a far better place than a lot of other countries throughout the world in terms of our women representation, particularly from a South African context. I think the reason why you and I are still sitting here talking about this is because, from my point of view, I remain so passionate and focused on bringing about that change. And I think that a lot of women that are now starting to find their voices and use their voices are using it for positive change. And if we don't keep having these honest, transparent conversations about the frustrations we have, and then actively going out and trying to be the change that this industry needs, we're never going to really see anything up until we start doing it. And that's what we're all doing. I think there's a whole group of women out there who are excited to be here and to be a part of this transition period that we're in. And I think that we're going to continue to scream from the rooftops and continue to talk the hard truths that people don't want to hear about and ruffle the feathers, because I think we need to be doing that. Else we're never going to see it. But we are that generation of leadership and women in this industry who are going to be the change. And it's an exciting time to be a woman in this industry because you can start to see things move. Mm-hmm. It's just not moving at the pace we all want it to. Yeah. But that doesn't mean we're going to sit back and do nothing about it. We're going to continue to fight. We're going to keep shouting about it. We're going to keep making people feel uncomfortable. And I think the more of us that stand up and rally together to do that, globally, collaboratively, we will bring about the change that we all are looking for. And then we're not going to be having a woman in mining conversation. We're going to be talking about the great professionals that have impacted this industry.
Well, I think, Raksha, yes, we've spoken about the challenges. We know the difficulties we face as the women of this industry. But at the same time, I think it's great to end on a positive note and to say, yes, this is a fight worth fighting for.
Yes.
We can make a change, and we're going to make a change, and we already have.
Yes.
Maybe it needs to be a bit more, a bit faster, but nonetheless, that change is happening, and it will continue to do so. So I appreciate ending on a really positive note. Great conversation, lots of transparency, lots of honesty, but ending on a high note is really great. Thank you so much, Raksha.
Thanks, Laura.